Hello, everyone. We are continuing with week one materials. We talked about programming basics, input-output statements. Today, we're going to talk about comments and whitespace and errors and warnings. Errors and warnings are the most frustrating part of writing programs. So we'll talk briefly about that so it'll help you figure out what's going on with Zybooks, what's going on with your program. But let's start with comments and whitespace. Comments are documentation for code. So it's good to have comments. So it gives you a couple of examples on how to have comments. You can see this is multi-line comment. This is a single line comment. So single line comment starts with a double slash, multi-line comment starts with a slash and an asterisk. And you can put in something about your code, your name, things like that. It is always good to have some comments in between. We don't want your code to be riddled with comments, but a few things here and there would help. Also shows you why white space is important, where you need blank lines, where you need a space and not like a tab. So this is good use of white space, it says. So you have declare all your variables, read from the input, do some calculations, and finally finish the program. Here's something that does not look good is to have, and I definitely don't want to see things like this. It's not, because it's not readable. So see out, no space here. Notice there's no space here. Two statements on the same line. Multiple statements on the same line, very hard to read code. So it's nicer to have code that is readable, that's clear, just like you write a paper, doesn't matter, right? And here's something about comments. What does a compiler do? A compiler takes your code and translates it into zeros and ones. Okay, this is what we write up here, and this is the machine code. And what happens to comments? So when you click start here, this kind of runs through a quick applet and shows you what exactly happens. So when this statement compiles, your compiler takes that statement and converts it into zeros and ones. And this is what it has for your executable file. And then if I click on this, the next step says it takes the comments, but it really doesn't do anything because comment is a documentation. It does not compile it. It does not translate it. It's just for a user to read, another programmer to read and see what it does. Right? That's all it is. And then, of course, the next statement gets converted into zeros and ones, and so does the last statement. And so we have three statements that are converted into machine code, and the comment is left alone. Okay, so that's how comments work, and white space is essentially to show you why it is important to have good spacing in your code. Now, the next part of it that I want to show or talk about today is errors and warnings. Errors and warnings are an integral part of writing program. We must have errors, otherwise we won't learn anything. Okay, but the question is here, what the errors mean and how should we figure these things out without getting frustrated. So most of the time in C++, the error is not reported on the line. So for example, traffic today, there is no semicolon at the end of the line. So the error reports that there was a semicolon or something is expected after or before, it says. Okay, so let's take a look at this code here. It says to do something, see out, hello. So we can copy that and you can put it in here. And notice we are going to make a mistake. We are not going to put the semicolon. We're going to run it and we're going to see what kind of an error do we get. And if you look at the error, it says expected semicolon before return. So if you look at the return statement, everything is fine, but it says there's a semicolon missing in the line before. So it's good for us to note that most of the time C++ comes out with errors that are not really on the line, but it says it is on the next line or in the previous line. So it's good to read some of them. It's not quite clear and direct. Okay, like this one, for example, would say that there is expected a semicolon after expression traffic today. So, but then this is misleading. That's what they're trying to say. There is a semicolon at the end of this, right? So that's not what the problem is. So what seems to be the problem? The problem is that there is this extraction operator that's missing there. So I always say to students, it's good to look at that line, a line after that, see if there's anything else wrong with that line. You don't always get direct errors from C++. So we are missing that little extraction operator there. Let's see here, what else? Let's look at this program, fixing syntax errors. So there are two parts to the errors. There's syntax error and then there's logic errors. So if we run this program as it is, let's see what kind of errors we get. It says expected initializer before int, line 6, num jars. It says before that line, there's something missing. And if you look at the previous line, yeah, there's a semicolon missing, right? So we fixed that. And here is good practice for fixing errors. Here is a really good practice, and I really like this. Focus on the first error message. Don't worry about the rest of them. So we fixed one error message. Let's run it again. So look at reported line of first error message. If error found, fix it. Compile and repeat. So we keep doing the same thing instead of trying to fix all the errors. The reason being sometimes that one error may fix a whole bunch of other errors. Now it says on line 7, there's something wrong. Line 7, oh, look, that's not blue, which means I must have spelled it wrong. Int was spelled as INL. So then we run again and see what the problem is. And now it says on line 13, something is not right. Did you mean num jars on line 13? So did we mean num jars? Yes, our variable is called num jars. So let's fix that. So put an S there because the variable has an S. Now you run it. So fix one error at a time, and you can actually see it's fulfilling because the error is reduced, and you know that we are doing something better. And now it says on line 15, there's a semicolon missing. Line 15 has a semicolon. But what's missing is between the variable and the literal string, there's this token that's missing. And that's what they're talking about, or that's what the compiler is complaining about. And so we did that. Oh, we have one more token missing. There's another one that's missing there. Let's try that. And hopefully there are no more errors. And it says this is what it does. 500 beans in 3 jars yields 500 times 3, 1500 total. So that is syntax errors. Now let's take a look at logic errors. What are logic errors? Logic errors are when you run the program, it's exactly the same program. When you run the program, it compiles and it gives us some output. But is that the right output? So the same program, 500 beans in 3 jars yields total beans, total. That doesn't make any sense. We need something else. We need a number there, right? So what's wrong here? So tracing code is another important part of what we do. So tracing code, we start at the top. Okay, the variable, yes, we declare, that's correct. We assign some values. Yeah, number of beans is 500, number of jars is 3, that much is right. See out, number of beans, 500 beans. Okay, that's what it says in. Number of jars is 3, 3 jars yields, that much is right. Then we calculate total beans equals number of beans times number of jars. That's right as well. We've multiplied the 2. We put it in total beans. Now, see out total beans, total. But the total beans is inside double quote. It's being converted to a literal string, which is what that is, which is not what we want. Total beans is a variable, and we shouldn't have double quotes around it. So take out the double quotes and make sure it's spelled correctly, which it is. Then you run it. And you notice now that the output is what we want. So you can have different types of logic errors. For example, this could have a logic error where maybe instead of multiplying, I have added it. And then if I run it, again, it's going to compile, but it's not going to give me 1500. It's probably going to give me a different number. It says 503, which is not right. So you can have different types of logic errors. It's good to take a look at it and see where the problems are and how to fix those things. So syntax errors and logic errors. So think about it, work through some of these things. I will see you in the next video.